Good morning. I want to thank the President of the Board of Trustees, the Chair of the Board of Trustees, and the State Senator. She's got a lot of titles here, but I think probably the most important one is that she's a Bennett Belle. Let's thank her for that wonderful introduction. President Dawkins, to the Board of Trustees, to the alumni, the faculty, staff, students, to all the elected officials who are here, and I'll have a lot more to say about them in just a moment, to the friends and families of Bennett College students, to the United Methodist Church. And I was the president of the United Methodist institution as well, Dillard University, so I know what it means to be a member of the United Methodist Church. Good morning. Good morning. So they say a lot of things about these Bennett Bells, but they kind of left out that Bennett Bells are singing bells. So let's give them a hand again. I'm really delighted to be here. I've been on the Bennett campus many times over the years. I think this is actually the first time I've actually spoken inside this chapel, and it's a beautiful chapel. And I'm deeply honored to be here. I have many reasons why I feel honored, but there is one that is really close to my heart and to my family. And it goes way back over 100 years ago, so I'm going to give you a little bit of family history and connection to Bennett College for Women. Shortly after my father's grandmother, who would be my great-grandmother, left Charleston, South Carolina, shortly after my father's mother left Charleston, South Carolina in 1903 to attend Fisk University, her widowed mother, my great-grandmother, decided to relocate from Charleston to Greensboro, North Carolina, a city where her older sister, Susan, was married and well established. And there were then 3 schools open to African Americans. There was North Carolina Agricultural and Mechanical College for the Colored Race. That was its title. There was Bennett College, which was coeducational. I think it was probably Bennett Normal, maybe in no, it was a college, and it was already a college. I'm going to say something about that. And then there was another school, Emmanuel Lutheran College, which closed in 1961. Of course, Bennett was co-ed. Now, my great-grandmother wanted all of her children educated, and Greensboro seemed like a good place, fertile ground for them to get an education. So she came here to live with her sister and brother-in-law, Aaron and Susan Mendenhall, at their home at 525 Macon Street, which then was across the street from the Bennett College campus, but was subsequently consumed by the Bennett College campus, and the best we can recollect, it's somewhere close to the administration building, that piece of land. Her brother-in-law, Aaron Mendenhall, was a respected businessman who, in 1889, when the North Carolina legislature granted Bennett its corporate charter, was named a trustee. And when my great-grandmother remarried in 1908, she did so in Aaron and Susan's home, now somewhere on the Bennett College campus, and the ceremony was officiated by the Reverend Silas A. Peeler, president of Bennett normal. It was college then. It was still college. But he was the president from 1905 to 1913. And while my three great aunts attended and ultimately graduated from Emmanuel Lutheran College, they were nurtured by the Greensboro Colored College community, including Bennett College. My grandmother, Minnie, went on to Fisk in 1903, as I said, and graduated in 1907. She was followed briefly by one of her younger sisters, Violet. But it was during Violet's time at Fisk that my great-grandmother could not afford to pay her tuition. And going through the records of Fisk, I found a letter that my great-grandmother had written to Fisk pleading for scholarship support. And she said, "It is my greatest dream that all of my daughters will be college graduates." But Fisk wasn't rich. My great-grandmother couldn't afford, so they had to go back home. Violet had to go back home to Greensboro, to Emmanuel Lutheran College. But you know, the Lord makes a way out of no way. And Violet did attend, did graduate, and she did find her life partner, William Hill, who was called to the Lutheran Church, and they spent their entire married life as minister and first lady of a small Lutheran church in Queens, New York. So there's a good side to all those stories. But one of the things that, so when I talk to you today to commemorate Founders Day, I do it knowing that the forefathers and foremothers of Bennett have touched my life in a very special way. And that through our Lomax Mendenhall family connection, my family has been interwoven with the Bennett family for over a century, and with the Greensboro community as well. And I also think about that letter that my great-grandmother wrote. And I think about it often. And I thought about it this morning, Dr. Dawkins, when I had the opportunity to meet with a group of Bennett Bells who have scholarships from the United Negro College Fund. I want those young women to stand. Give them a hand. And you could say, and I want to say to all of the Bennett Bells who are here today, that we at UNCF view our work as a profession, but we also view it as a calling. And part of that calling is to help and support young women like you who are on that journey to earning that most important college degree. And part of the way we do that is through these scholarships. Now, we're going to award millions of dollars in scholarships annually, but we can only award them to young women and young men who apply for them. Is there a message in that? Yes. And the message is, if you don't like loans and you really like scholarships, apply. Apply, apply, apply. Now, let me start my speech where I will end it, with your president, Dr. Phyllis Worthy Dawkins. Bennett Bells, and I hope the whole Greensboro community hears me. Let me tell you that I have the pleasure of working with almost every single president of an HBCU in some capacity or another. I also work with the presidents of some of the largest those Fortune 500 corporations in our country and with our nation's leaders in various spheres. So I know executives and I know leaders, and among them, you should know that Dr. Dawkins stands out. The level of commitment that she brings to this institution, which is a jewel, is something that is special. She is determined, relentless, persistent, and above all, she is courageous. She is inspired by Bennett and Bennett Bells, and her commitment inspires all of us to follow her lead and to do what she commands us to do, which is to support Bennett College for Women. So let's give our president, Dr. Phyllis Dawkins, a really big hand. Now, don't consider this a veiled threat, but take it as I give it, because I said this last time I was here. I hope the Board of Directors and the Board of Trustees of Bennett College appreciates Dr. Dawkins. If you don't, we will take her at UNCF. Now, we have other guests here today, including some very distinguished members of Congress, and I will acknowledge them more appropriately in my remarks. This is the 145th year of Bennett College. I could talk about the founding. I could focus solely on Warnersville Methodist Episcopal Church's basement, now St. Matthew's. That's a story which we hear over and over again about those church basements in the founding of historically black colleges. I don't know what we would have done if they hadn't had basements. I could talk about the transition from co-ed institution to the institution that Kenya Samuels Gray, a Bennett alumna on our staff at UNCF, who calls Bennett, and I quote, "the place where the girl you are meets the woman you will become." However, I feel led to talk about the Bennett right now and the Bennett of the future. Why? Because we need to put to bed the question that people ask when they are just ill-informed, and that is, why do we need HBCUs? To me, the appropriate question is, why don't you understand how important HBCUs are in meeting our national needs? Or, why don't we invest more in HBCUs to meet our national security needs for an educated workforce and an informed citizenry? Or how do HBCUs do more with less? Or how can HBCUs take those who are hardly ever invested in and create the workforce and the leaders and the citizens we are asking for? A person who questions the need for HBCUs is a person, to me, who questions the essence of equality. The opportunity to deliver education for all and a society that really is the dream of Martin Luther King Jr., a graduate of the institution that is Bennett College's official brother school, Morehouse College. Why do we need HBCUs? Frankly, I am beyond that question. I believe Bennett is beyond that question. Bennett Bells, are you beyond that question? Yes. And so, now, where is Bennett? Where will the future take her? And how can you and I help ensure that future? Right now, in 2018, black women are among the most educated segment of the American population. Among the most educated. And they have the biggest appetite for education. They are pursuing education at all costs because they know that equality and education are linked. That tells me that the role of Bennett is the same as it was when this very community was in the spotlight of the civil rights movement. Bennett's role then and now is leader. When no other institution in this area would allow Dr. King to speak and address the public, guess where he was embraced? Bennett College. And guess which campus was the only place where his foot soldiers for justice could meet, strategize, and prepare to dismantle segregation and forge a new Greensboro as a community for all. Where? Bennett College for Women. Ladies, you stand on the shoulders of Bennett giants like Dr. Willa Beatrice Player. Certainly she was the first African-American woman to be president of a 4-year, fully accredited liberal arts college. You know, I'm from Atlanta and I used to teach at a 4-year liberal arts women's college that will remain nameless. But we didn't get our first woman president, black woman president, until the 1980s. And she followed several men. So, Willa Player was ahead of her time. But Willa Player was much, much more. She was a giant not just because of her academic credentials, not just because of her executive leadership, but also because of her progressive mindset. When the women of Bennett College joined the civil rights movement, they didn't do it over the objections of the president of the college. It was Dr. Player who had enough foresight to call their parents, not to warn them, not to say, get your daughter back on campus, but to say, they're doing what's right and everything will be all right. When the Bennett Bells who came before you were arrested, standing up to make sure our Constitution fulfilled the promise of the very words it espouses, it was Dr. Player who made sure they got their homework done, even while wrongfully imprisoned. That's leadership. That's forward thinking. That's Bennett College, where Bennett Bells learn in the classroom and in the community laboratory that surrounds the campus. Bennett Bells are prepared for leadership by taking risks and acting with courage and determination in behalf of others. In the same way, the Bennett College of the past, that the students who came before you and even its past administrations helped to make sure that Greensboro and America were better. That is the same expectation of a Bennett Bell today. Make your community stronger, better. And you must make sure that the country you have inherited does more to reflect the nation Dr. King envisioned in 1963 at the March on Washington, when he inspired the world with his powerful oratory and told us simply, I have a dream. Now let me admit a fault of mine. Whenever I meet an African American woman who is strong, determined, forward-thinking, and working to make things better, I always think to myself, well, she must be a Bennett Bell. And when I ask her where she went to school, even if she says another institution of higher learning, I feel like she has that Bennett spirit. I offer to you, Bennett Bells, that there are other sheep in your flock that you are influencing, even though they may not be in the classroom and on this campus. Maybe they did not attend Bennett, but they are Bennett Bells at heart. And sometimes the stars align so that those bells come home to Bennett. And that is the case with Dr. Phyllis Dawkins. She is a fellow HBCU alumna with a fine educational pedigree and a storied academic career. She did not know it, bells, but Dr. Dawkins was being prepared for a time like this at Bennett College. And she was ready for leadership. Phyllis Dawkins and I have known each other some time, but in this year, 2018, my admiration and respect for her rose to whole new heights. I hope yours have as well. You know, she approached me and my team, and it was not like when others come to UNCF, I must admit. You see, Dr. Dawkins admitted that she had a problem and she needed help. When she became your president, she saw challenges to the fiscal condition of Bennett, and she was determined to improve the bottom line. She knew what the issues were. She needed to grow enrollment. She needed to get Bennett in line with its accrediting body. She needed to make sure that Bennett had the chance not just to survive, but the opportunity to thrive and to be the lifeblood it has always been to the greater Greensboro community. So she reached out for help from others. And that is such a sign of leadership. Just pause and think about it. It's the folks who think they can do it all by themselves. Why? Because they want all the credit for themselves. But when you have the humility and the wisdom to recognize that a team can get more done than an individual, that's a wise and courageous leader. So she called others, and I feel blessed that she called on me. And she said, you know, she didn't say I have a problem. She said, I have an idea, which is just a problem by another name. She worked with the leadership team at UNCF led by Ladrigus Murray. And, you know, I'm going to just pause for a moment. He's over here with his, taking video of what I'm saying, and he's going to get this on video. I just happened to have the good luck to find him to lead our public policy and government affairs work, because he has led us all in the right direction. But she worked with that leadership team led by Ladrigus. And that included more people, included our researchers and our data collectors at the Frederick Douglass Patterson Research Institute, and our branding, marketing, and communications team who would tell the story and help build the base of support. And then she went to Capitol Hill because the problem could not be solved alone here in Greensboro. It couldn't be solved alone here in North Carolina. It couldn't be solved alone by reaching out to Bennett Bells. This was a big, big problem, and we needed our federal government to help us solve it. And Dr. Dawkins did something through her leadership that very few people are able to do. She reached out to folks on both sides of the aisle to build a bipartisan coalition of believers. And for that, all HBCUs owe her a debt of gratitude. And I believe the nation also does, because she's helping to show us that we can work together, that we can park our disagreements somewhere else and find that little sliver where we agree, and we can do powerful, powerful things working as a team. So let me tell you, Bennett, it is easier to build a coalition when you have members of Congress who understand the value of a jewel like Bennett College. Representative Ted Budd represents Bennett College in the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, Congressman Budd is there. I want him to just stand up while I say what I got to say. Hold your applause. Just stand up. Representative Budd knew of the history and leadership of this great institution in his congressional district. And I got to tell you, he has been a joy to work with and very productive in behalf of the work that we were pursuing. We have been on the Hill together, speaking across partisan lines, and we have been in the offices of the highest ranking official in the Department of Education, the Secretary, sitting there with Congressman Budd, where Dr. Dawkins could tell her story and the story of Bennett. And I will tell you, she said, this isn't just Bennett's story. This is the story of other HBCUs, and a solve for Bennett will be a solve for others. I want you to give Congressman Ted Budd the hand he deserves. Now, he didn't do it by himself. He joined hand in hand across the aisle with the godmother of HBCUs. That is, in the Congress, Dr. Congresswoman Alma Adams. Congresswoman, I know you're shy, but please stand up. Now, hold your applause. Hold. We just want to gaze upon her for a moment. Now, I know, Bennett, that you know Congresswoman Alma Adams. She taught on this campus for 40 years. This lady came to Congress, however. Now, let me just say, and I've taught on HBCU campus. I know how hard that work was. So she decided to retire and go to Congress, where things would be a little bit easier. This lady came to Congress and did what no one else has ever done. She made HBCUs her signature issue. Now she moves the needle on Capitol Hill for our schools like no one else ever has. She started the first ever bipartisan HBCU caucus in the Congress. And since then, our institutions have started to prosper. And now when Rodriguez Burry and I walk the halls of Congress, as we did last Wednesday, and visited, as an example, the two senators from the state of Alabama. Pause. The two senators from the state of Alabama, the chair of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Shelby, a Republican, and the junior senator from Alabama, a Democrat, Senator Doug Jones. Both of them spoke from the same script. They'd read the same hymnal. They'd been to the church that Representative Alma Adams has been leading, of bipartisan support for HBCUs, and I think they had learned their scripture. Pia Holland, another Bennett Bell on my staff, told me that Congresswoman Adams once said, Bennett bells are voting bells. But I'm going to tell you, they're also vote-getting bells, because they got all the votes that we needed to pass our legislation. Let's give Congresswoman Adams a big round of applause. Thank you. Dr. Dawkins banded together with UNCF and these two dynamic members of Congress, Ted Budd and Alma Adams, and the goal was simple: help Bennett College solve her problems. Now, Dr. Dawkins went to see our congressional partners on January 31st. Think about this. This is January 31st of 2018. By March 23rd, in record time and lightning speed, we had a law that helped 8 historically black colleges and universities with $10 million for deferment of their principal and interest payments on their cap financing loans. And Bennett, thankfully, was number 1 in line. Ladies and gentlemen, that's leadership. That is forward thinking. That's Bennett College. Dr. Dawkins, Congressman Budd, Congresswoman Adams, thank you so much. I don't believe that the applause that we have extended so enthusiastically really expresses the extraordinary and profound gratitude that we have for you. Because not only have you helped Bennett with these financial resources, I think you've delivered some heavy capital into the self-confidence and the belief that this institution has in itself. This institution has weathered a lot of storms, but it's been beaten down by a bunch of them. But I think what Bennett has proved to itself is it has the persistence, the determination, and the capacity to solve its problems, and the courage to do so. Together, across the aisle, you put Bennett College on a stronger foundation. And I'm glad to announce that because of your hard work with Dr. Dawkins and a growing bipartisan coalition, and when those bipartisan letters went out on this most recent budget, we had people asking to sign that letter. And guess what? That $10 million that was in the 18 budget that was passed in March has now grown to $20 million in the budget that was approved last week. Which assures, because we got to do this every year, that Bennett College will be eligible for a second year of funding. But it also assures that at least 5 more institutions that also stand in need of the solution that Bennett College crafted will also be the beneficiaries of that as well. Ladies, that is Bennett's Dr. Dawkins, Representative Budd, and Representative Adams working with their growing coalition. And what is the result? Bennett closed its books for fiscal year 2018 in June, stronger than at any time in its recent past. The books were in the black, running a positive balance. And the word went out, and the women flocked to Bennett this fall. So enrollment is growing. And the philanthropic community is starting to take notice, with, as usual, the Bennett Bells leading the way. So Bennett Bells are giving bells. They are philanthropic bells. They are alumni who believe enough in their institutions to dig into their purses, pull out their checkbooks, and write their checks. Bennett's graduates have been investing in their alma mater at rates that other HBCUs are envious of. And I have one message for Greensboro and North Carolina. If you want to invest in a growing enterprise with a proven product, invest in Bennett College right now. They have the right president, Dr. Dawkins, and she has the right vision for this institution that is producing the right product. They have friends on Capitol Hill, and they have friends and admirers, and maybe a few envious spectators from within UNCF. Now, let me close. Bennett is close to my heart. My past has some roots here on this campus. And when I look out at the faces of African American women who are destined to change the world, it touches my heart. You know, I think about those early women college graduates. I think about my great-grandmother who was born in 1865 in Charleston, South Carolina, the city where the Civil War began. Her parents lived through that war. And she was the first in her family to learn to read and to write, so that she could write that letter to Fisk and say what her aspirations were for her children. I think about my grandmother who graduated from college in 1907, who became a teacher. And she joined a black women's sorority in Chicago, where she had gone back to graduate school at the University of Chicago to earn a degree. And she was one of the founders of her chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority at the University of Chicago, the graduate chapter. And I think about those women who fought for education, those women who were the first to have the right to vote, those women who dedicated their lives to educating another generation as teachers, because that was the profession that was open to them at the time. They all had the Bennett spirit. They all were Bennett Bells. And you know, they all viewed themselves as sisters of a larger sorority, black women with a college degree. And they came together across all of the institutions that they attended, in whatever cities they were, to join in doing good work in behalf of their communities. I am the father of 3 daughters and the grandfather of 3 beautiful girls. I know what determined young women can do. They can get money out of me anytime they ask for it. So I just want to remind you to do what Bennett Bells have always done, Bells. Do what Dr. Dawkins is doing. Do like Congresswoman Adams is doing. Go out there and be strong, progressive, and change the world. Be confident knowing that you belong in any room God blesses you to walk into. You belong at any graduate school, any professional school. You belong at any boardroom table. You belong in any C-suite of a corporation. And you do, right now, indeed, belong at Bennett College for Women. Thank you, and God bless you.
I would like to thank Dr. Lomax, not only for those very inspiring words, but also for connecting the details of your family to the Bennett College history, and also for everything the United Negro College Fund does to help Bennett and the other 36 member institutions. Once again, let's give them another round of applause. Dr. Lomax, 10,000 or tens of thousands of African American students, including many Bennett Bells, have realized the dream of obtaining a college degree because of your efforts. You should be very proud of the incredibly important work that you and your staff do. And now, as we bring this wonderful ceremony to a close, I would like to ask Dr. Lomax, Ladrigus Murray, Congressman Ted Budd, and Congresswoman Alma S. Adams to please come to the podium. Earlier this year, a few members of my staff, including VPs Leathers and Summers and Trustee Harris by conference call, and I met with Dr. Lomax and Ladrigus Murray to discuss the possibility of having legislation passed that would enable Bennett and later other HBCUs to get deferments on loan payments owed to the HBCU Capital Finance Loan Program. After our meeting, Dr. Lomax and Mr. Murray, I can't speak enough about Mr. Murray, he's our lobbyist, contacted Representative Budd and Representative Adams, who convinced Congress to grant deferments on HBCU Capital Finance Loan payments to Bennett and other private HBCUs for as many as 6 years, ending in fiscal year 2023. The historic legislation was written into law in just 51 days. That's unheard of. A process that generally takes a year or even years. But as someone told me later when I returned to campus, it would take an act of Congress. And it did. It did take an act of Congress. Thanks to this historic bipartisan effort, Bennett College will be reimbursed about $1.1 million this week. I would be remiss if, on behalf of the Bennett College Board of Trustees, faculty, staff, students, alumni, and friends of the college, I didn't seize this opportunity to personally and publicly thank the four of you, Dr. Lomax, Mr. Murray, Congressman Budd, and Congresswoman Adams, for your stalwart efforts in making this dream a reality. So on this day, as we celebrate Founders Day at Bennett College, please accept this small token of appreciation on behalf of the entire Bennett College family.
Hold yours. Don't we look good? Come on, move over.